And welcome to the Blue Collar Breakdown. I'm Tom Eddlem, your host. I'm the Blue Collar Economist. This is episode number 29. I'm going to take a break from my How the Economy's Rigged Against You series. Next week, we'll revisit it. I expect we will. We'll be talking about big ag, agriculture, and how food prices, how you're a two-time loser when it comes to food prices. You pay higher prices at the supermarket because of government policies that you have to pay taxes to support. I'll get into that. And there's also gatekeeping regulations. It's just it's all rigged against you. But today I want to talk about Venezuela and Iran because that's what's in the news, and I can't not talk about Iran because I expect we're very close to going to war with Iran. And by war, I mean missile strikes, drone strikes, all that kind of stuff, not boots on the ground. I suspect that's not going to happen. Before I do, I got to say, make sure you like, share, subscribe, and comment. Also, comment. Go in the comment boards, especially on YouTube. I can usually see the comments. If you want to comment, I'm here. And other things. Hey, I'm with the Libertarian Institute, and they've got a piece coming out about me, not about me, written by me at some point on the MAGA breakup. So make sure you keep tuned to the Libertarian Institute for that. I also did a couple podcasts over the last week. My interview with Scott Horton is out. I think it's only out for paid subscribers right now, but you'll be able to get it eventually. I talked with Scott about Venezuela, some of the stuff I'm going to talk about today. And lastly, I did Sentinels of Liberty with my friend Jeremy Andert and with my other friend Sean Kennedy, who is the chairman of the Libertarian Party's American Liberty Caucus. So you want to check out Sentinels of Liberty as well as the Scott Horton Show. All right, I think that's all the basic stuff I got to do. Now, before I go further, let's talk a little bit about Iranian history because it sort of relates to today. Actually, it more than sort of does. I'm not going to give you a big history lesson and bore you. I'm just going to say in 1953, Iran had a secular democracy led by this guy, Mohammad Mossadegh. And Mossadegh he led a secular government in a majority Shiite country. There were minorities in the coalition that were religious, but the ruling coalition was the parties were secular, and the CIA did a coup against it. And by coup, I mean they did this. All right, first they hired mobsters to go around and do economic sabotage. They literally hired mobsters. The CIA did. Then they did false flag attacks on all kinds of sites, and they did fake demonstrations. And of course, some real people went in to the demonstrations, and they did some propaganda. Of course, back then the media wasn't as important because Americans didn't know about what we were doing across or halfway around the world. They didn't suspect we were doing anything. And what they did was they put the Shah, Reza Pahlavi, in power, and he was in power until 1979 when there was a religious revolution because one of the strongest institutions other than government in most countries, even into the 1970s, were churches. If you look at how communism fell in Poland, it was the Catholic Church. Well, in Iran, who brought down the Shah? It was the imams in Shia Islam. Well, what happened was, of course, not a good government, right? I mean, I don't think anybody likes the mullahs who run Iran unofficially. I mean, officially they have a regular government or whatever, but the mullahs have extraordinary influence over Iran today. Okay, keep that in mind. Right now we've got a revolution going, and guess what? There's violence, according to a new report from this. I guess this picture doesn't really show exactly what it is, but I went over to the gray zone, and they showed that there's a lot of violence going on in Iran, and not just by the government. There's economic sabotage and a whole bunch of things that don't correspond with peaceful protesting. All right. And what else is going on? Well, the Mossad, the Israeli intelligence, has openly come out and said, hey, go to the streets, overthrow your rulers. We're with you, not just in spirit, but in the streets. So the Mossad says, hey, we're there. And one of the things that's happened since that, and by the way, that's not just, I showed a tweet from Mossad Farsi. Farsi is the language of the Persians in Iran. But that was an official site. It wasn't just some guy, some guy who says, I'm going to create a Mossad Farsi, Twitter handle. No, this was actually the Mossad. Okay. Here's a story from the Jerusalem Post talking about it. So you've got this revolution where a lot of people are upset with the government. In fact, one of the things that I noticed, one of the first things I said is, okay, this is what I'm getting from the media, from the Western media. I'm getting, stories of all these protests and the protesters are being repressed and everything. I wonder what the government says. We can't get it. If you go to official or even unofficial Iranian websites, what you get is this. This website has been seized. The CIA, NSA, I don't know, whatever agency is responsible for it, went to all of these web domains and got them taken down. They censored in America. By the way, Press TV you can still get in the UK. You just can't get it in the US. You have to go to, if you want Press TV, which is the Iranian state television company, you can't get it in the US because our government censored it, but the British government did not. Okay, that's how bad. Like you think we're accustomed in the last couple of years, especially on the political right, to say, "Oh well, we're not like those British doing all those arrests for Facebook posts." But we are censoring. The U.S. government is censoring. This happened in 2021, so it happened under Biden, by the way. So let's not just put this all on Trump. Trump is bad, absolutely. Orange man bad, if you want to say that. But this happened under Biden. Okay, in 2021. All right. So, and what happens is you can't get the official, or in this case, the Tehran Times is more of an unofficial newspaper. It's published in English only. So it's more for external, outside of Iran audience. But you can see the official story is, hey, the game over, they had pro-regime rallies, and they have arrests of a bunch of the rioters. According to the official story, if you go to the Tehran Times, I couldn't go to them. Well, I could get this headline, but I couldn't get much. But if you go to that or Press TV, you get pretty much the same story. You have to jump through a whole bunch of hoops to get to those websites, though, because Americans don't see it, and that's on purpose. Okay, one of the things they said is, "Hey, started out when there were some economic protests, and we thought they were legitimate, and we let them go. But when there was rioting, then the law enforcement came in." Now, keep in mind, the only goal of censorship is to suppress the truth. Nobody censors to bring out the truth. Nobody ever censors to bring out the truth. The only goal of the censor is to suppress the truth. Now, I don't doubt that this Tehran Times, which is the unofficial spokesman of the regime, there's this official spokesman too, has a lot of lies, but there's probably some truths in there that they don't want you to see. Okay? What's the old Roman Stoic philosopher Seneca? He who judges, I'm going to butcher the quote, but it says, "He who judges but doesn't hear both sides judges unjustly." You you have to get all the perspectives in order to make a judgment, and Americans are not allowed to get the judgment. Let me give you a couple examples of how you're probably not getting the full truth. Okay. And one of the most famous things coming out of Iran these days is this picture of this beautiful young woman smoking a cigarette, and she's lighting the cigarette with a picture of on fire of the Ayatollah Khamenei. Okay. Not Khomeini. Khomeini's been dead since 1989. Khamenei. Okay. He's a different Ayatollah. Looks a lot alike, like the other guy from the 80s, but he's not. And you think, oh, and a lot of Americans are like, oh, such a brave young Iranian woman. But if you look a little closer at the picture, there's a lot of snow in the background. A lot of snow. And you start thinking, Iran's not exactly known for its ski slopes and its big snows. You know what is known for a lot of snow? Canada. And guess what? She's from Canada. Yes, the most famous woman of the Iranian protest wasn't in Iran. She was in Canada. All right. According to, I forget where I got this, but it was it was a legitimate news site. The woman posts on X under the handle of Morticia Adams. I mean, she does have the black fingernails to go with it. And according to her post, is 25 and lives in Canada. And she, according to her, she was an Iranian exile or whatever. But I mean, we get these myths. All right. We get these myths. We are being propagandized to. Here's another one. Okay. This one I got on Facebook. It's conservative twins. And I don't know who the conservative twins are, but somehow they came up on my Facebook feed and I comment on them once in a while. And it's an Iranian woman publicly removing her burqa and revealing a T-shirt condemning Khamenei in Iran. It says here in the photo. And of course, all the comments are like, wow, that woman's so brave, risking her life. And it's the woman's a French actress in France. And, one of the giveaways is the T-shirt says F, at the F-bomb, Khamenei. I'm thinking, if she were in Iran, she'd probably have it in Farsi or maybe Arabic. But why would she do it in English? Of course, she didn't. And here's the other thing. She's not doing it in America or Canada where they speak English. She's doing it in France. And it's in English. Who's the target audience? Is it the Farsi-speaking Iranians? Because the Americans are being told this woman is in Iran and she's doing this brave thing. But she's in France and she's an actress. So here's the thing. I mean, we are being propagandized. Doesn't mean that the Iranian regime is good. It's not. That it's a government, we can presume it's bad. But in Iran's case, it's a particularly bad government. All right. It's way worse than your average government. But we are being propagandized. All right. And there's a lot of people out there. Here's one thing I really want to emphasize. Okay. It's a very important thing. If you support regime change, you should only do it not because you oppose the regime that's in power, but because you have a strong belief that the regime that replaces it will be better than the regime that's in power. Okay? It doesn't matter if the regime in power is bad. Because if you support regime change and the regime that replaces it is worse, then you've done a net evil. And we can look at those American, I didn't really go into how the National Endowment for Democracy, which is a CIA cutout, had funneled tens of millions of dollars into Iranian NGOs by near government organizations, and probably is leading a lot of these protests. and probably is responsible for some of the sabotage, although I suspect the Mossad is probably responsible for most of it. But here's the thing. When you back the regime and you back replacing the regime and you risk something is worse, you do something that's net evil. Look at the history of regime changes supported by the National Endowment for Democracy and the CIA and the Mossad in recent years. Well, let's see. They supported regime change in Syria, so they replaced Assad with what? With Al-Qaeda. All right, Al-Qaeda now runs Syria. They replaced Muammar Gaddafi in Libya back in 2013, or was it 14? And what happened? It's run by gangs that have reinstituted chattel slavery. Objectively worse. In Afghanistan, well, we had a 20-year war, and we replaced the Taliban with the Taliban, and I suppose you could say, well, that's a wash, but we killed 20 million, or not 20 million. We killed several 100,000 people, and we lost, I don't know, hundreds of American soldiers, maybe over 1,000. I know in Iraq it was close to 5,000. And what did? Are we better off? Even Iraq, if you look at the million people that were lost, you can't really say that they're better off. Maybe their government isn't quite as bad as Saddam Hussein here 20 years later, but Saddam Hussein was old and he was going to die anyway. You look at, okay, what would have happened? Well, 1 million people would be alive, and they'd probably be a democracy anyway, and probably a better one. So it's hard to say that, that any of these regime change wars that we've been fighting have resulted in better governments. But a lot of Americans just sort of assume, oh, well, we're going to support, the Iranians are fighting for freedom, and George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and John Adams are just going to come back from the grave, but with dark hair as and speak in Farsi and be able to write a constitution for the Iranians, and they're going to have perfect democracy. I mean, it's just, a lot of the people, here's a good test. Okay. Here's a good test. If you back change in a government, all right, you think, all right, I've got this government, it's bad, and I want to replace it. At least have an idea of who you think might take power when it's over. I mean, I would gather probably not 1 in 100, less than 1 in 100 of the people backing the protests in Iran today would be able to name anyone who would take power who would be better. I mean, I know some people are really big on restoring the Shah, the Nepo baby Shah. The Shah died in 1980-ish, 80, 81 or whatever. Maybe it was 82. He died of cancer, but his son is still around and living in Maryland or Virginia. And a lot of people, especially the Israelis, want to be able to return him to his throne as a monarch again. But the original Shah was very brutal, killed tens of thousands of people, and I'm not convinced that would be better than the mullahs right now. From the perspective of the Israelis, their goal has just been to destroy all the governments around them and make them either ungovernable wastelands like Gaza and Syria and Afghanistan, or complete satraps to the U.S. and the Israeli alliance like Egypt and Jordan and Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states. I mean, they have to be one or the other. They cannot be independent. And that's really what makes the Israelis hate the Iranian mullahs, because they support the Gazans, they support the people in the West Bank, and they hate that. So where was I going with this? The test is, if you back a change, you should have some idea of who's going to replace it and some idea that it will be better than what there is. But I'm willing to bet that most Americans just have this, oh, well, we're going to have change and it's going to be wonderful. We're going to have all of this, this freedom across Iran, just like they did with Venezuela. I didn't do it. You didn't do it. When Trump sent U.S. troops, murdered 80 Venezuelans, and kidnapped Nicolas Maduro, the terrible president of Venezuela, everybody was like, yeah, America, we're bringing freedom to Venezuela. And the next thing Trump did, he made a deal with Maduro's running mate, the vice president. And he kept the Chavistas in power. And when, of course, the narrative in the previous weeks and months in Washington was Nicolas Maduro cheated on the 2024 elections. He didn't really win. And, the guy who ran Gonzalez and the woman who basically picked him because Maria Corina Machado, they were the ones that almost everybody said won the election. And when someone asked Donald Trump, well, what about change of regime in this Maria Corina Machado? What about her? What about Maria Corina? All Trump could say was, well, she's kind of popular, but she doesn't have any support. And all I could think of was dude, you and all your minions just spent the last 6 months telling us that Maduro lost the election to Gonzalez and Maria Corina, and now you're saying, oh, there's no support. You just basically overturned. It changes on a dime. And of course, the Venezuelan kidnapping of Maduro and the murder of the 80 people there with the military strike, that they revealed that to be just an oil heist. I mean, it's just a heist. That's all it is. It's just, it just brings back St. Augustine's remark about absent justice, what are kingdoms but vast robberies? And in this case, America is just a vast robbery. We're stealing their oil, and Trump is saying, well, I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to administer it. It's interesting that I wrote a story not too long ago for the Libertarian Institute saying that billionaires, not socialism, is the greatest threat to the free market. And I said that nobody's coming to nationalize the oil industry. Nobody's coming to nationalize the steel mills. Who knew that Donald Trump, and now admittedly he is a billionaire too, so I wasn't fully wrong, but who knew that he was going to actually engage in actual socialism? I mean, it's socialism of the imperialist kind, but it's socialism nonetheless, because it's the government taking control of the means of production. In this case, the American government taking control of the Venezuelan government's means of production. But that's what it's just one of those things where I almost feel like I have to issue an apology for the article. I'm not going to, but I almost feel like I do, because Trump just turned it into a heist. And of course, for Trump, it's, his next thing, he's already on to the next thing with Greenland. He basically said, we must have Lebensraum for America. We must take Greenland, and I will accept nothing else. I mean, that's Trump right now. He's moved on to the next military operation. Plus, he's already threatening Iran again. He says if Iran threatens their demonstrators and starts shooting any demonstrators, he will take action. Not really taking action if the government kills demonstrators in Minneapolis, but if Tehran does it, oh well, then we're going to go after them. I don't know if that's a perfect analogy, but it was low-hanging fruit. Okay, so don't go after me and say, what are you, some kind of leftist or whatever? I mean, it was low-hanging fruit. Come on, you have to admit it. All right, let's see. I think that's about all I wanted to cover. Did I cover it all? I did, and here I am. I'm about out of time anyway. So I'm going to call it a week. Again, check the Libertarian Institute. Like, share, subscribe, comment. Let me know how I'm doing. Also, buy me a coffee, because I need help with this podcast. I need help from you, the listener, not just financially, but engagement, and but also financially, so I can afford to buy some more equipment and stuff. So if you like what you see, buy me a coffee. If you don't like what you see, all right, well, I admit I'm not much to look at. All right, see you guys next week.